Jesus' words in today's gospel might strike us at first as, when we're listening to it, a little bit cold, maybe even a little harsh. But these words are actually an invitation not to walk away from life, but to embrace life's essence to the fullest. Jesus invites you and me to increase our capacity for love. For you and me to live a life fully human and alive in both hope and in joy that comes from trying to love like God loves. To make the love of God a living reality in every life that we touch. The challenge for you and me is to continue to grow, to continue to love, to continue to be there for one another. You and I become our true selves. Our purpose is fulfilled when we increase our capacity for love. Because the only way one can truly open oneself to God first and foremost is to have a great capacity for love. When someone has this capacity for love, it changes the way that they see the world around them. Such a person sees the glass half full instead of half empty. And one not only sees the world a lot more like God sees the world, but a person with a great capacity for love has a worldview that leads him and her to actually act more like Jesus Christ. Is this impossible? Absolutely not. St. Francis of Assisi, the founder of my religious order, had a boundless capacity for love. St. Francis's way of seeing the world was changed after he embraced the leper. In his own words, what had been bitter became sweet. From that point on, he saw the goodness of God reflected in all creation, and it forever changed him. His capacity for love continued to grow. He always saw the glass half full. A story of St. Francis that shows how his capacity for love grew and influenced how he lived is the story of St. Francis and the wolf of Gubbio. Since this is my last Mass with you guys, I thought it'd be fitting to share a story of someone dear to me, to Sister Jeremy Francis of Assisi. And so, in Italy, there is a village called Gubbio. And when Francis visited the town, the townsfolk were living in fear. You see, a wolf had been terrorizing their town. At night, the wolf would come into the town and prey upon the people. The people were afraid for their lives. It had gotten so bad that no one would go out after dark. And they were afraid that the wolf may actually begin to stalk them in the daylight. The people of Gubbio were all certain about one thing. They wanted the wolf dead. Well, when Francis heard of this from the townspeople, he told them that he would seek out the wolf and try to get the wolf to stop doing what he was doing. Of course, they all thought he was crazy and that he'd get himself killed by this vicious wolf. But Francis was undeterred. Remember, Francis loved all of God's creation. And so Francis set off to find the wolf, and soon enough he found him. Francis approached the wolf with peace and love in his heart. The wolf didn't attack Francis. And Francis told the wolf that he had to stop preying upon the people of Gubbio. The wolf put his head down. Francis looked at the wolf and realized that the wolf was hungry. Then Francis understood what had been happening. You see, the townspeople had been hunting the very same animals that the wolf needed to hunt to survive. But without a steady supply of animals to eat, the wolf was left to prey upon the town. So, Francis made a deal with the wolf. He asked the wolf that if he could get the people of Gubbio to provide for him the food that he needed, would he, the wolf, stop preying upon the people? The wolf nodded his head in agreement. So Francis and the wolf headed back into the town of Gubbio. The people were shocked and amazed. Everyone came out to see the saint along with the object of their hatred. And so in front of everyone, Francis explained why the wolf had been terrorizing their town. And Francis told the people that if they would provide for the wolf's basic needs, that the wolf would never hurt them again. The townspeople agreed, and the wolf sealed the deal by shaking his paw in Francis's hand. I'm not making that up, that's in the story. From that day on, the wolf and the people of Gubbio grew in their appreciation for each other. They lived in peace and harmony for many years. They even say that the wolf was actually revered, with families vying to invite him over to their home to feed him. What had once been seen as an object of fear and hatred had become a source of joy and love. Francis's actions were recorded and has been one of the great stories associated with St. Francis of Assisi. So, was St. Francis some sort of medieval Dr. Dolittle? Not really. You see, the story is what's called an hagiographical story. It's a story that tells the truth of a saint's life, but in a poetic kind of way. What some scholars believe today, and what the people of Gubbio probably knew 800 years ago, was that the wolf was most likely a man, a desperate criminal who had been terrorizing the town. So St. Francis approached this man as Christ would. He looked at the man not with hatred and disdain, but with peace and love toward the man. Now, he held the man accountable for his actions, but he also didn't try to destroy the man. He found a way to broker a sustainable, peaceful solution. And all because St. Francis saw in this man something good, the glass half full. Not easy, is it? Especially when the glass may be only 1/10 full or less. But even a little bit of that fullness or goodness is valuable. When someone has a great capacity for love, it changes the way that they see the world around them. Such a person can see the glass half full instead of half empty. And you and I already know that a half full glass can be refilled. Not only does one see the world a lot more like God sees the world, but a person with a great capacity for love has a worldview that leads him or her to actually act more Christ-like. You and me, by our common baptism, has as our vocation to be Christian, to be like Christ. And if we want to be Christ-like, as St. Francis of Assisi was, then we too must change the way of our thinking, that easy way of self-gratification and self-interest. We must see people first, not as what they can or can't do for us, nor are we to focus on the problems and sins that they carry. Rather, you and I must try to see in them the original goodness that comes from being a daughter or son of our loving Creator God. You and I must try to see each other as God sees us. My sisters and brothers, our faith gives you and me that perspective to be able to see the good even in the most trying and difficult people, to see the way to make things right again, to see reason for hope, to see God's hand at work in the events of our lives. Our faith That same faith that St. Francis embraced helps us to transform our lives so that we can let go of our fears, our hatred, our prejudices, our jealousy, whatever it is that blinds us to God's goodness, and to see in each other the goodness that resides in each of us. The very goodness that God sees first and foremost when God looks at you and me. As Christians, we are called to see in each person their goodness, the glass half full. In expanding our capacity for love, with the help of God's wisdom and grace, we can transform our crosses into an experience of resurrection, in which we discover the love of God in our midst. And you and I become the means for revealing that love to those we love and who love us. May you and I always accept that invitation from God to expand our capacity for love. And may God give you God's peace and all good.